Every colossal biosciences announcement focuses on what goes right. 3 direwolf pups, alive and growing. Mammoth embryo transfer happening now. Thylacine reintroduction in 8 years. Clean headlines, exciting footage, a company making the impossible look routine. This video asks the question none of those announcements answered. Not whether it works. What happens when it works exactly as planned and the consequences nobody fully modeled show up anyway? 6 programs, ranked from safest to most dangerous. And the one at number 1 is not dangerous for the reason you think. Number 6, the blue buck. The one that could actually work cleanly. Start here because not everything on this list is alarming. The blue buck deserves that acknowledgement. It was an antelope. Silvery blue-gray coat. Stood about 4 feet at the shoulder, lived across the southwestern Cape of South Africa for thousands of years, and was hunted to extinction by European colonists by around 1800. The only large African mammal to disappear in recorded human history. 4 stuffed museum specimens. That is everything that remains. Colossal announced the bluebuck as their 6th program on April 30th, 2026. The closest living relative is the roan antelope. The 2 species share more than 98% of their genomic sequence. Scientists obtained bluebuck DNA from a mounted skin at the Swedish Museum of Natural History in Stockholm. The editing gap is smaller here than in any other colossal program. Fewer differences to bridge. More complete starting material. A closer living relative. The most technically tractable de-extinction on the list. And the ecological risk profile is about as low as a de-extinction gets. It is a herbivore. It is not an apex predator. It is not a keystone species that restructures ecosystems around it. It is a grazing antelope returning to a grassland range where grazing antelopes currently exist. The South African ecosystem is not going to tip into chaos because a medium-sized bluish antelope is back in it. The main risk is the obvious one. The habitat it left 200 years ago has changed. The Cape grasslands have been significantly altered by agriculture and development. Returning an animal to a landscape that no longer fully resembles the one it evolved in is a challenge every reintroduction program faces. It is a real challenge. It is also a manageable one compared to everything above it on this list. The bluebuck is the closest thing on this list to a straightforward win. And it is number 6 because Colossal's pipeline needed one of those. Number 5, the dodo. The symbol that brings specific problems back with it. The dodo is the universal symbol of irreversible extinction. Bringing it back is the most symbolically important thing on this list. It is also the entry that most clearly illustrates what happens when you solve the de-extinction problem without solving the original extinction problem. The dodo died around 1681 on Mauritius. It was not hunted directly to extinction, at least not primarily. It was killed by what European sailors brought with them. Rats that ate dodo eggs. Pigs and dogs that destroyed nesting sites. Invasive species that dismantled a reproductive strategy that had worked perfectly on an island with no ground predators for millions of years. The dodo walked toward humans because nothing in its evolutionary history had taught it to run. Within 80 years of first contact, it was gone. The rats are still on Mauritius. The invasive species that created the conditions for extinction are still present on the island in various forms. Colossal's dodo program has produced chimeric chick surrogates and established a Nicobar pigeon breeding colony in Texas. The technical pathway is advancing. The restoration plan for Mauritius exists. But the ecological problem that killed the dodo has not been solved. You cannot restore a species to an island and expect different outcomes if the island still contains everything that produced the original outcome. This is not an insurmountable problem. Mauritius has active conservation programs. Invasive species management is a real field with real tools. Island ecosystems have been successfully restored before. The point is not that bringing back the dodo is a bad idea. The point is that the announcement of the de-extinction program is not the same thing as solving the extinction driver. And until the extinction driver is addressed, returning the animal to its original range is not restoration, it is repetition. The dodo is number 5 because the risk is real but geographically contained. It is an island. The consequences of getting it wrong stay on that island. which is a form of comfort not available on anything above it on this list. Number 4. The moa. Peter Jackson involved. The moa stood 10 feet tall. It was the largest bird that ever existed on any island ecosystem. Completely wingless, legs built like columns. It went extinct in New Zealand approximately 700 years ago, when the Maori arrived and hunted it to zero within a few generations. Colossal announced the moa program in partnership with Peter Jackson and New Zealand's Ngai Tahu Research Center. The goal is to sequence all 9 moa species and identify a reintroduction pathway. The closest living relative is the tinamou, a South American bird. The genome work is underway. New Zealand's ecosystems are among the most sensitive on Earth to introduce species. The country lost a catastrophic proportion of its native biodiversity after human arrival, not just the moa, but dozens of bird species, many reptiles, and much of its original ecological structure. The conservation community in New Zealand takes introduced species more seriously than almost any other country on the planet. And they are serious, because they have seen what happens when you are not. The moa's return raises a specific question that the partnership announcement did not answer. The forests and shrublands of New Zealand spent 700 years growing without the browsing pressure of a 10-foot bird. Plant communities have changed. Species that survived because the moa was no longer eating them have expanded. Species that relied on the moa for seed dispersal have contracted. The ecosystem is not waiting for the moa to come back. It has moved on without it. Introducing a 10-foot browser into forests that evolved in its absence for 700 years is not restoration in any simple sense. It is an ecological experiment at landscape scale with no control group and no established monitoring framework. The experiment might produce wonderful results. The rewilding literature has examples of large herbivore reintroductions producing ecosystem improvements that surprised everyone involved. It might also produce results that nobody predicted because the system the moa is returning to is not the system that produced it. Peter Jackson's involvement is either reassuring or it is not, depending entirely on your feelings about large creative personalities directing conservation outcomes. The science is the Ngai Tahu Research Center's. The funding and the cultural momentum is significantly his. That combination has produced remarkable outcomes in some contexts. In others, it has produced outcomes driven more by vision than by ecological modeling. The moa program is early enough that which category it falls into has not been determined yet. Number 3. The thylacine. The thylacine went extinct in 1936, 90 years ago. The last one died in a Hobart zoo on a cold night in September, while the keeper had already gone home. There is 17 seconds of film. You can watch it. The last Tasmanian tiger pacing its enclosure, still alive, then not. Colossal acquired the Thylacine Integrated Genomics Restoration Research Lab at the University of Melbourne in August 2025. They have a 99.9% complete genome. They have marsupial-specific induced pluripotent stem cells, a world first. They have Andrew Pask, the world's leading thylacine researcher, as their chief biology officer. The technical progress is real, and it is significant. The 8-year reintroduction timeline is ambitious, but not implausible given where the program currently sits. The risk here is specific and documented by the wolf reintroduction literature. When you return an apex predator to an ecosystem that operated without it for 90 years, the prey species within that ecosystem have spent 90 years adapting their behavior, their population densities, and their habitat use to a predator-free environment. The reintroduction changes everything, not just for the prey, for every species that interacts with the prey, for the vegetation that the prey species managed, for the rivers shaped by the vegetation. The trophic cascade from a single apex predator reintroduction ripples through an ecosystem for decades, in ways that even the best ecological models underestimate. Yellowstone took 30 years to reveal the full extent of the gray wolf reintroduction's impact. The thylacine is smaller than a gray wolf. Its impact will be smaller in scale. But Tasmania is a more fragile island ecosystem than Yellowstone is a national park. The margin for unintended consequences is narrower. The program is 8 years from reintroduction. 8 years is long enough to do the ecological modeling properly, long enough to prepare the habitat, long enough to engage the Aboriginal Tasmanian communities whose relationship with this animal predates European contact by tens of thousands of years. Whether Colossal uses that 8 years for genuine ecological preparation or for building the press narrative around a launch event will determine which category this program falls into. The technology is not the risk. The institutional incentives around the announcement are. Number 2. The direwolf. Already happening. The risks are not theoretical. Everything in the previous scripts in this series applies here. The breeding program was confirmed this week. More pups by end of 2026. A self-sustaining population is the stated goal. The specific risks are this. 3 founding animals is a genetic bottleneck that produces inbreeding depression within a few generations without additional lab-produced founders. Colossal will need to produce more animals from the original cell lines, which means the population is not naturally self-sustaining in the way the announcement implied. It is a managed genetic program, producing animals to corporate specifications, with no independent oversight and no legal framework governing its expansion. The edited genes are compatible with wild gray wolf genetics. The animals can interbreed with wild populations. The moment an edited gene enters a wild wolf, it cannot be removed. It spreads according to the same mathematics as any other genetic variant, and reaches animals in places no researcher will ever monitor. The cognitive profile of the animals is outside the gray wolf baseline in documented ways. Romulus mapped the camera maintenance schedule. Khaleesi timed the shift changes. They anticipate rather than react. A population of animals with this cognitive profile, no natural fear of humans, and edited genes that can enter wild populations is a situation with no established management protocol. And Colossal filed a patent on the animals. They intend to file patents on all transgenic animals the program produces. The population that is supposedly going to sustain itself naturally is legally owned by a private company. The intellectual property claim and the rewilding ambition are in direct tension with each other, and nobody has resolved that tension in any public document. The direwolf is number 2 because the risks are not future risks. They are current risks getting larger every week the breeding program advances without legal framework, ecological modeling, or independent oversight. Number 1. The mammoth. The highest stakes thing a private company has ever attempted. The woolly mammoth program is the reason Colossal exists. It is the founding project. Everything else was built on the infrastructure it developed. And it is number 1 on this list, not because a mammoth walking through Siberia is inherently dangerous. It is because of what the mammoth program is actually trying to do and what the consequences of getting it wrong look like at scale. Start with the science as it currently stands. Colossal's CEO confirmed last month that the mammoth team is in the last stages of editing, and that the next stage will be doing embryo transfer into elephants. That embryo transfer is the most technically complex reproductive event in the history of de-extinction. Elephants have a 22-month gestation period. They are highly socially complex animals with documented emotional architecture and grief responses. The surrogate elephants carrying mammoth variant embryos will be going through a pregnancy with an animal that is physiologically different from any calf their bodies have ever managed. The veterinary challenges are unprecedented. The welfare implications for the surrogate elephants have not been publicly addressed in any detail. Then there is the patent. In April 2025, Colossal filed a patent seeking exclusive rights to create and sell gene-edited elephants containing woolly mammoth DNA. If the program succeeds, the animals it produces are intellectual property. Not just the first calves, any animal produced anywhere in the world using this technology. A private company with a $10 billion valuation would hold an intellectual property claim over the living organisms at the center of the most discussed climate intervention in the de-extinction field. And the climate intervention is the largest stakes element of all. The mammoth program is explicitly framed as a contribution to permafrost preservation. The argument is that mammoth-like grazers introduced to the Siberian tundra will restore grassland ecosystems that insulate the permafrost more effectively than the current moss and shrub cover. The permafrost contains approximately 1.5 trillion tons of frozen organic carbon. Stabilizing it matters enormously. Getting the intervention wrong matters enormously in a different direction. The grassland restoration argument has 30 years of supporting data from Pleistocene Park. Sergei Zimov's fieldwork is real and it is compelling. The introduction of large grazers does produce measurable grassland recovery. The question is whether a de-extincted mammoth variant animal, introduced at population scale, produces the specific grazing patterns and snow compression dynamics that the model requires. And whether the timeline of population growth, the decades it would take to build enough animals to affect permafrost dynamics at meaningful scale, is fast enough to matter given the rate at which the permafrost is currently thawing. The mammoth program could work exactly as designed and still not work fast enough. The animals might arrive too late for the ecosystem engineering to have the climate impact the model requires. Or they might arrive on schedule and produce ecological dynamics in the tundra that the model did not fully predict because no model has ever had a woolly mammoth in it to calibrate against. The mammoth is number one because the scale of what could go right and the scale of what could go wrong are both enormous. And because the decision about whether to proceed with the program is being made by a private company with investors, a patent filing, and a marketing team, rather than by a body with the mandate and the accountability to weigh those stakes on behalf of the planet that contains the permafrost. 6 programs, 1 ranking. And the honest conclusion is that the ranking does not capture everything. The bluebuck could go wrong in ways a risk framework does not anticipate. The mammoth could go exactly right and change the climate trajectory of the planet in ways that justify every concern this video raised. The thylacine reintroduction could be the most ecologically careful de-extinction in history, or the most rushed, depending entirely on decisions that have not been made yet. What the ranking captures is this. The risk in each program is proportional, not just to the animal, but to the scale of the ecosystem it is returning to, the legal and governance frameworks available to manage it, and the institutional incentives of the company running the program. And on all 3 of those dimensions, the mammoth program is operating at a scale that no other program on this list approaches. Colossal is a company. Companies have investors. Investors have timelines. Timelines create pressure. And the history of large-scale ecological interventions carried out under investor pressure and marketing timelines is not a history that produces exclusively good outcomes. The animals are real. The science is real. The ecological stakes are real. And the governance frameworks, legal structures, and independent oversight mechanisms that should exist before these animals walk back into the world they left do not yet exist in any form adequate to the scale of what is being attempted. That is the thing none of the announcements mentioned. And it is the thing worth paying attention to while there is still time to build it. If the breeding program that is happening right now is what keeps you watching, our last video covers it in detail. Watch. Direwolves are about to breed. Nobody knows what happens. Next. The genetics of what the second generation looks like. The homozygous expression problem. The patent. The legal vacuum. And the specific question that gets larger every week the program advances without an answer.